Ken Kruger is the founder and CEO at Moon, a platform that makes it simple for anyone to spend their Bitcoin anywhere credit cards are accepted online. In our conversation, we talked about exactly how Moon works. We talked about Moon's partnership with Visa, how Visa and other payment processors are going to have to adapt in an era of Lightning Network payments. And we also talked about privacy, security, e-commerce, and the future of the Lightning Network. Now, as you go through this episode, if you find anything valuable, insightful, if you learn something new, the best way that you can let me know is by sending in sats, sending in comments, and sending in questions, sats that reflect the value that you got out of this episode. If you didn't get much info, if you didn't like it, don't send anything in. If you thought it was incredible, if you thought you learned a lot, send in a lot of sats. That's my benchmark. That's how I measure whether or not the audience is actually enjoying the show. Real quick, before we get into the episode today, today's show is sponsored by Voltage. Voltage is the premier provider of Bitcoin and Lightning node infrastructure. We will have more from Voltage later in the show. I hope you enjoy this episode. Ken, thanks so much for coming on today. I'm really excited to chat with you about Moon and exactly what you're building. But maybe before we get into how it works, why don't you start with your background in Bitcoin and why you decided that it was important to build Moon?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. So I've been following Bitcoin since 2010. I am an engineer, and around that point in time, I was just browsing Reddit when it was a bunch of engineers talking about tech stuff, and you had the libertarian people, and everybody's talking about Ron Paul, and this thing called Bitcoin came up. It's a pretty cool idea. Let me read more about this. So I started reading more about it. I didn't end up buying any, unfortunately, because at that point in time, you meet somebody in an alley and give them cash. I'm like, I'm not doing that. That's sketchy. Maybe biggest decision, worst decision of my life. But later, started trading a little bit. 2013, I'm in the lawsuit against Mt. Gox, so that's a lot of fun. I get a lot of mail from Japan, and just it's always been this thing, kind of as a hobby that I was involved in, and up until 2018, I asked a couple friends, hey, we should build something in Bitcoin. We should do something cool. And everybody says, no, it's a scam. Oh, that's stupid. Don't waste your time. So finally, 2018, I decided, all right, I'm just going to, it's about time. I'm doing this on my own now. I was really excited to start Moon because I always saw Bitcoin as, having these built-in network effects. It was going to grow and eventually just kind of take over the world. And obviously that doesn't happen without people building companies and services around Bitcoin. And 2018, it was right after the big 2017 price increase when everybody was doing a bunch of scams and ICOs and all this crazy stuff was going on, that it just seemed like a lot of pump and dumps. Nobody was building for the long-term future of Bitcoin. And I'm like, all right, hey, if we're all going to live on this stuff someday, you need some simple products that are user-friendly, allowing you to do that, right? So that was kind of my inspiration for starting Moon, trying to really crack the, unit of exchange problem. So 2019, we launched a product that allowed you to shop on Amazon with Bitcoin. And that was a big hit. It was one of the first Lightning projects out there. And it was a really slick browser extension that augmented the checkout experience on Amazon.com. Scan a Lightning invoice, and boom, your Amazon purchase was paid for. Really cool stuff. It was front page of every crypto news website in the world. We eventually hit the front page of TechCrunch. Headline, Amazon accepts Bitcoin. Unfortunately, Amazon did not like that. They sent us a cease and desist, had to shut down the product. So that was a lot of fun. But
what were you using to make that payment then? Because someone would pay a Lightning invoice, mm-hmm. and then how did that get to Amazon's bank account?
So behind the scenes, what we would do is we would purchase an Amazon gift card in the exact amount. And behind the scenes, our browser plugin would plug in the gift card and press all the buttons on the checkout page. To the user, it was completely seamless. They just scanned the QR code, and that was it. and it was the coolest looking thing. Like, people literally thought Amazon started accepting Bitcoin. And also why Amazon didn't care for it too much. You know, they spend like $1 billion a year optimizing their checkout experience. They don't want some joker like me poking around and messing things up for them. So, but that was a pretty, you know, in retrospect, a cool experience to go through that. At the time, extraordinarily stressful experience. But so after we got shut down by Amazon, a few months later, we got this partnership with Visa. I spent the start of the pandemic rebuilding the product from the ground up, integrating with the Visa network, and then we relaunched Moon in its current version actually a year ago this week. We can go into exactly what that is, but that's kind of like my background in Bitcoin so far.
Yeah, that's awesome, and it's a really cool story about Amazon. Would love to hear more about, for listeners who aren't familiar, what is the current version of Moon today exactly? Can you walk through exactly how that works, and maybe like from a purchaser's journey, if I'm looking to buy a product, how do I go about doing that using Moon?
Absolutely. So it's very straightforward. If you want to buy something with Bitcoin, you go to our website, paywithmoon.com. You create an account. We just ask for an email address and a password. Once your account is created, you can create a virtual Visa card. You just kind of click Create Card. You type in the exact amount. So you want $50 on a card, or maybe your purchase, you want to shop on Amazon, your purchase is $47.23, right? You can specify the exact amount that you want to load onto a card. We have a few different payment methods, but right now, Lightning Network is the primary one. Select Lightning. You'll get a Lightning invoice, scan it with your favorite Lightning wallet, and you're going to get almost instantaneously a virtual Visa card with that exact amount of US dollar specified on it. You can use that to complete your purchase anywhere Visa is accepted in the United States.
Interesting. So now this seems a lot like that payment flow you were describing with Amazon, just with Visa, where now you can access obviously a lot more merchants. What from Visa and Amazon's perspective, what was it that Visa liked and Amazon did not like? Like why did one say, yeah, let's do it, and the other one's like, no?
Yeah, so I think with Amazon there were two things. One was again, messing with their checkout experience, right? Like I said, they spend $1 billion a year optimizing that page. That is the holy grail of any e-commerce website, is the checkout page. You know, they have a payments team, they have a crypto team doing investigations into what they may do eventually, right? They did not like me coming along and just like, boop, like popping their bubble there and kind of taking over things. Where with Visa has an internal initiative specifically saying, they want a Visa card in every crypto wallet in the world. That is their goal. They see the writing on the wall. They want to be with crypto, Bitcoin. Like, they're figuring out exactly, how they're going to maintain their relevancy as we go into this future. So when I came along and said, "Hey, here's what we're doing," this is really just kind of at the start of when they started their crypto group at Visa. They're like, "Hey, this seems pretty cool." We were one of the first people trying to do crypto payments over the Visa network. Most people were either, they create a merchant plugin where they, allow the merchant to accept crypto directly, or you get a couple of companies creating physical cards. But with our approach, it was very unique, it was very different. It was kind of somewhat right time, right place. So it worked out pretty well. So you mentioned Visa is trying, like their initiative is to try and put a Visa card in every crypto wallet. Is that the idea? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
How would that work? Do you know much about the mechanics of how they plan to get there as a company?
Yeah, so there's many different ways that it can go, right? So right now, if you look at Coinbase, Binance, FTX, right, they all just get a Visa physical card they can send out to their customers. Swipe the card, it pulls from your custodial balance, right? What we're doing, a little bit different. We're non-custodial. We're doing Lightning. Instead of pulling from a custodial account, you push from a non-custodial wallet, right? So we were trying to push the limits on what's possible there. And I think there are a lot of other ways to slice and dice it. I think there's some interesting things you do with smart contracts and, there's a lot of different things, and I think everybody's still trying to figure out exactly what that looks like. From our perspective, the benefit of working with Visa is that pretty much everyone accepts Visa, right? And if you want to use Bitcoin as a medium of exchange, it's just like, well, they're already integrated with every point of sale system. So, we don't need to wait for every merchant in the world to accept Bitcoin directly. I think that's going to happen eventually regardless. But the traditional payments networks, at least for the foreseeable future, and maybe even longer term, may have a role to play here because they own that integration at, you can't just think e-commerce, but think about every brick and mortar store, right? Like they're already there, they're already integrated. So,
right.
So for us, it made a lot of sense. Like, hey, let's use the network, let's connect the Lightning network and the Visa network together, and now you can just pay with Lightning everywhere. Interesting.
So for Visa in their business, is there any difference from accepting, like having someone who owns a card tied to a bank or tied to a custodial crypto exchange or tied to Moon? Does Visa see a difference? If they all go out and make a $100 payment, does Visa get the same amount of money on every single one of those transactions?
Yes. Yeah. So on Visa's side, they don't see too much of a difference on, because the way Visa makes money is from the merchants, right?
Right.
Every merchant, they have to pay their interchange fee, which is generally, like around 3%. It depends on the type of merchant, the geography. It's actually wildly complex. On the payer side, right? It doesn't matter all that much, right? We just have to push dollars over the Visa network. So, they are doing some cool things with settlement in USDC. I think they're going to be doing experimenting with a lot of other cool, settlement in digital assets that are not US dollars. So there's some really interesting things there that may get some cost savings. But otherwise, yeah, to Visa, it doesn't make much of a difference other than, hey, we don't want to lose out to people bypassing the Visa payment network and switching to pay with crypto directly. Yeah.
Do you think that Visa's cost structure, that fee that they charge merchants, often, especially online, I see this fee structure in the fine print on a lot of sites as 2.9% plus 30 cents.
Yep.
Do you think that fee structure is something that Visa's worried about and recognizes that they may have to lower over time, or do you think they feel confident that because they have this network of merchants and they've really got this like lock on retail payments that they can sustain that fee structure?
Yeah. So, I kind of take a different approach, right? And when I think of it, I think, what keeps people using cards? Often it's the rewards, right? I have my card, I get my travel rewards, my points, whatever it is. That's paid for by the merchants indirectly, right? That 2.9% plus 30 cents, that gets passed through to the company issuing the card. So if that fee structure goes down, you don't get rewards cards anymore, right? So it's kind of what happens in that circumstance. While it does kind of suck for the merchants to have to, cough up that 3%, for the consumer, it's like, well, that's why they're going to pick one card over another card often, right? So I think a lot about this and say, okay, well, say people switch to Bitcoin. A merchant says, all right, I'm gonna integrate with one of these payment processors, allows me to accept Bitcoin directly. I'll pay 1% or 0.5%, which I think is about the price that we see these days. What happens to cards, right? If the interchange fees get reduced and the rewards for cards get reduced, what does that look like? And then on the other side, if Bitcoin is competing with traditional payments rails, if you have to pay a fee to spend your own money, right? If you're making an on-chain payment or even, Lightning, sometimes there's a small fee, but there is a fee, right? But you're used to getting 1% back or 1.5% back. It flips the economics. So from a consumer, often you are very much incentivized to spend a card because you are going to save money, right? So that's something I'm always thinking about, like who's going to pay with, say the Lightning Network at a merchant, who's going to actually use a card. The cool thing about our solution is you get a little bit of both. You pay the Lightning to load a card and then you spend the card, and we have the option to pass on rewards to the customer.
Right. Now, do you think that maybe there's a world where merchants just have a lower price for items if purchased with Lightning, like where they can just say, listen, it's 3% off if you buy with Lightning, or on a small item it could be 5% because that fixed component of Visa's fee eats into your margin at smaller costs.
Yeah, I think the pandemic actually did a lot to help this movement. So what I noticed when the pandemic started was a lot of restaurants, you'd go in and they'd say, pay with cash, save 3%, right? I noticed that a lot, and I'm not sure if the laws around that changed. They may have. It used to be that you could not charge a different price for cash or credit. Like gas stations are allowed to charge a different price, cash or credit, but other merchants were not allowed to charge a different price. So if those laws change, I think you will 100% see that. I've been personally seeing it in my day-to-day life more and more. And it makes a lot of sense, right? Like, okay, you want to get your rewards, you're going to have to pay a little bit extra for the product.
Yeah. I think I've noticed that in Europe, actually. That's some place, like I've been to a few, you go to little cafes in Europe and they're like, oh, it's $5, but if you got a card, it's $6. Or you know, there's just a different fee associated. But that's interesting. Do you view Visa as a competitor at all? Or like, because I know you have this great relationship now where they give you access, as you mentioned, to all these merchants and you can kind of build this cool product. But at what point does that start to shift? Do you view them like as a means to get into Lightning? Do you think they serve a purpose for Moon past this first use case of like getting access to all these merchants? Is there a way to entirely sidestep Visa and kind of build your own native Lightning products? What are your thoughts on like the competitive dynamic there with Visa and that relationship?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see us as competitive with Visa at all. We have a great relationship, and they're super excited about everything that we're working on. I think a lot of people in Bitcoin are like, oh man, screw Visa. We got to cut out Visa. They're crooks. They're taking everyone's money. They have built a very efficient like money printing machine, right? They're the gatekeeper, and they get their 3% on every card swipe. It's like, what an amazing business model, right? But they're trying to adapt. They're trying to learn. They're not, I think a lot of these larger companies, they learned the lesson of, Google displacing Yahoo. And, when all that disruption that happened, they're trying to disrupt themselves, And I think that's what you've seen, pretty much over the past year. Every major company is now like they have a crypto thing. They've got a Bitcoin thing. I mean, they're doing NFTs and stuff, which is like completely bonkers. 20 years ago, I don't think any company would be adapting to change so quickly. So when I look at Visa, I see, a company that's like looking to embrace change. And they want to maintain relevancy. I think they bring a lot to the table because they have the relationships. They have these integrations already. And they work with government, like every government in the world, right? They have to manage all the different relationships, the regulations, and things like that. So they bring a lot of value. I think you could say, okay, Visa is competing with the Bitcoin network itself, but in the end, I think they're going to be complementary as opposed to competitive. I think there's definitely a place for Visa, MasterCard, Amex to, be a layer in the payment stack or be a provider where, good luck. How many years is it going to be until you get every mom and pop shop to accept Bitcoin directly, right? And then how long is it going to be, how are they going to figure out, is it going to be Bitcoin? Is it going to be this crypto? Is it going to be this? Is it stablecoins, CBDCs? There's going to be so much going on there. And the fact that Visa is just already there integrated and crypto companies can go to Visa and be like, we want to push payments over the Visa network. And they're like super receptive to it. They love the idea. They want to work with you. So, I think it's to be seen kind of how everything plays out. But I do see Visa, existing alongside, all the new methods of payment like Lightning, and being integrated directly with Lightning too.
That's fair. Now, you mentioned stablecoins, CBDCs, and I wonder what you think the demand is for people to pay with Lightning. I know many of your customers are using this Lightning integration. You have another integration with Coinbase as well, but many are choosing Lightning. What about the stablecoin side of things? Is that going to be an important driver for demand, people trying to spend money at merchants, or do you think that's still to be seen?
Yeah, for us at Moon, stablecoins is a big part of our strategy. Right? We're Bitcoin first, and after that, it's stablecoins. There's a lot of value to that for a few reasons. One is, if you are Bitcoin native or crypto native, maybe you're trading in and out of Bitcoin, you're probably going into a stablecoin, right? Like if you're operating in the crypto world, why would you want to go back to the fiat world? It costs money and friction and time to go in and out. And then what we've also seen is people around the world, in the developing world, they want stablecoins, right? They may say, Bitcoin's a little too volatile. I don't think it's too volatile. And a lot of people in Bitcoin don't think it's too volatile. But if you make $5 a day, or less in a developing world, putting your wealth into Bitcoin and you have to buy stuff and live on that, a 10 to 20% dip in price in a day could mean like your family doesn't eat that much that day, right? So, putting your wealth into a stable coin, is something that a lot of people are doing. They see a lot of value to that. It preserves their wealth. Obviously there's inflation. It's not preserving their wealth long term as well as Bitcoin is. But just the brand US dollar around the world, and if they see USDC, USDT, whatever it is, they see that USD and they're like, I got to get me some of that, right? Because as much as we want to complain about the US dollar, people around the world, they have it much, much worse with their fiat currencies.
So they're thinking like, I just want to get out of this fiat shitcoin that I'm in, whatever it is. Yep. There's dozens, maybe 100 that are devaluing faster than the US dollar. And so they're all looking at the US dollar as like the Bitcoin of the fiat world. Whereas in America, I guess in North America, we kind of look at that as like the US dollar is bad and like Bitcoin's the store of value. But it's interesting to see different perspectives in different parts of the world. Where do you think most of the commerce activity on Moon is going to come from? Is it going to be North American consumers, or is it going to be the developing world?
Developing world, by far. I would kind of segment our market into two sections. One are US-based crypto natives, Bitcoiners, people who, they're opting out of the fiat system, right? And maybe it's because they are, again, hardcore Bitcoiners and it's more of a philosophical thing. Or maybe, they invested in Bitcoin 5 years ago and now it's 99% of their wealth. And then you have people who are crypto natives. They are, buying and selling NFTs and play to earn games. And they're just like in that world, like full time. They're full-time traders, things like that. But that's still somewhat niche within the United States. Outside the United States, though, there's huge demand to get a hold of US dollars and make online payments. So one of the most important factors of our product, which we haven't mentioned yet, was that there's no KYC requirement in order to use Moon. And that's very powerful for people around the world because, the reason why many folks are unbanked or underbanked is because they don't have the documentation necessary to open up a bank account and get a card. So what we take for granted in the U.S. is making a payment with a Visa or a MasterCard, buying something online, for many people is just completely out of reach. They can't open a bank account. And if you look at places like Africa, it's like 80% of the African population doesn't have like a birth certificate, right? Because they're like born in some small village somewhere and the documentation's a mess and there's civil wars and all that, right? And then even if you are fortunate, say for example, you're in Nigeria and you're fortunate enough to open up a bank account, you can't get a Visa card with more than a $100 limit. Doesn't matter how wealthy you are, no more than $100. So you can't buy anything online for more than $100. And recently, the Nigerian banks banned any cross-border payments to the United States. So if you're in Africa and you want Spotify, Netflix, any of these like basic things that we take for granted, a product like Moon is the thing that allows them to access that kind of first world experience.
Interesting. So Now, on the Moon site, you guys have labels. There's like 3 value propositions. One says private, one says secure, and one says no fees. Of those 3, you kind of alluded to it in the last question, but of those 3, which do you think is the most important today, and does that change over time for your customers?
Yeah, so I think the privacy is the most important. That's by far what everybody appreciates the most. The core Bitcoin community just loves the fact that we're private. That's just from a philosophical perspective, right? What I want to do when building this product was to make it really in line with the values of the Bitcoin community, right? There's a lot of products out there that's like, yeah, we do Bitcoin, and it's like custodial. You need to provide 17 forms of identification, a selfie with a gesture, and it's like, well, what's the point now? I love, I'm at heart, really, I'm like a freedom loving kind of guy. And, I don't like to have my finances monitored and things like that. So privacy is very important. And we accomplish that in 2 ways. One is, again, not requiring KYC. The other is our integration with the Lightning Network. So, if you load our cards over the Lightning Network and make a payment, it's really the most private way you can pay with Bitcoin in the world, which is very powerful, right? And I think, like I said, the people in the U.S. that are, they have those values. Then you have people overseas that are maybe in a repressive regime of some kind, where they need to make a payment. Maybe they're in Venezuela or something. They're not supposed to be making these payments. Maybe they are they're not the right political party in that dictatorship, right? Like it's very important that they have the ability to make private payments.
Right. We were talking about this website. I had seen a website. I'll put it in the show notes when I find it, but I couldn't find it this morning. Basically, the website said it was like a 6-step process of how to make a completely private payment on Lightning using Moon. And I remember some of the steps just from reading it. It was like, first one was like get a VPN, so your IP address can't be tracked. Next was like get a fake email at like Proton Mail or something like that. Go to Moon, use that email, set up the account, send funds from Lightning. Then it was like have Amazon ship the product to a PO box and go walk and pick it up. And so Amazon doesn't get your address, IP, email, any of that information. And I think in that site, the guy who had written it mentioned it was only, that process was like only US based right now. But you could easily see how this expands to anyone being able to make a perfectly private transaction and buying something without any oversight at all.
Yeah.
Do you think that becomes then a common theme in payments more broadly? Do you think that over time people are going to start to request and demand like having privacy? Because right now we give a lot of this information up, almost like we don't even think about it. Our banks, our credit cards, our phone, they all have this information on us, and we basically know whenever we make a transaction, someone's watching or someone has this data somewhere. We kind of just give it up. Like, do you think that we shift away from that in the next decade?
Yeah, I think we're seeing a movement start where people care much more about their privacy. Especially with a lot of the recent global events that have been happening. I think it's concerning a lot of people. And I like to give this example. I have a friend of the family. She's pushing 70, non-technical at all. Like she has to call me to help her with her printer. It's a few years ago. She's like, "What's Bitcoin? What is this, a scam? Like, what's going on?" And now she's like, she only uses Signal. She's asking me if she should get a privacy phone because she doesn't trust Apple or Google with her data. She thinks that they're gonna, if she has the wrong political opinion, she's going to get shut down. They're going to shadow ban me on Facebook or something because they don't want me to get the word out about my beliefs, right? And I think you're seeing more and more of this movement start. And I think there's this convergence with the global events that are happening, the technologies that are being built It's surprising me even. If you would have asked me 2 years ago if just like my family friends would start using Signal, I'd like, nope, I didn't see that coming. But I think there's a lot of concern for that now, and a light has been shown on kind of what the large tech companies have been doing, what the government has access to, and all the financial monitoring and restrictions that are now in front of us. Not even on the regulatory side, but even just companies experiencing pressure to shut down payments of certain companies that may not be something they want to be associated with. So, not that I support one thing or another, but I think people see that, and it's very concerning to them. And our mission is, and I believe that payment should be private, and that because it does really open up the gateway to a lot of different types of censorship.
What has been the catalyst, do you think, over the last few years leading to people getting so concerned? Like, all this stuff kind of happened with like deplatforming people on social. I know payments were a big thing for certain like groups of people who were, whether they're buying guns or they're doing like adult content or something like that. Like, there's just marginalized groups on the internet that now are shut off from payments. What do you think started this whole, like, why is this now becoming a thing today and not a decade ago or 2 decades ago?
Yeah, I think a lot of companies historically just kind of treated themselves like pipes, right? Like, we're Twitter, we've got the pipes, you tweet some stuff, we don't care what you talk about, right? As long as it's not illegal, right? We're going to do as little work as possible to follow the law. Like, we're not trying to censor anybody, or, saying that like Visa and MasterCard, right? Like, yeah, you get a card, you make a payment, no worries, right? I think all these companies started experiencing pressure from public opinion, from politics, and as you've seen over the last probably 10 years or so, companies more and more now are forced to make political decisions. Do you want this on your platform? What's this? What's that? It's weird to see companies have to take moral positions on things. And we've just seen that more and more. And I think consumers expect that of companies of which they're a customer. They say, oh, I'm not going to do business with you. I'm not going to do business with you. What's behind that? Maybe there is a lot of political motivation, or maybe there is, there's a lot of benefit to pressuring companies. Say, for example, you're of one political affiliation or some organization that wants to see change happen, right? One of the most effective ways to make change happen is to pressure a company that has a lot of power, pressure them in the public domain, and create a PR nightmare for them, and kind of force their hand to get them to do what you want to do. It's
cancel culture.
It's wacky. Yeah.
Yeah. I see that developing for sure. I wonder though whether or not that is sustainable, and whether or not companies start to push back and say, listen, we're not getting into the politics here. We don't really care about, left or right or blue or red or whatever the, like, we're building a business. I think Coinbase actually did this. They put out a blog post that went pretty viral and was kind of controversial in Silicon Valley maybe last year, just saying, like, leave politics out of the workplace. We're trying to build a business here. Because I also wonder, like, is this not fragmenting every business if they start to take political sides? Like, in America, you got half of the country voting one side and half the other side, more or less, basically all the time. Are you not just like, as you start to politicize your business, are you not then just like cutting your customer base in half and like shooting yourself in the foot?
Yeah, and I think that's what we're seeing. We're seeing a lot of, given that a lot of tech companies tend to be a little bit more left-leaning, I think you're seeing a mirror, like, tech world start of right-leaning companies, right? Like, you have, Parler and Trump's new Truth social platform. So on the social side, you see that happening. Or even when it comes to GoFundMe, Patreon, right? Now you have locals.com, and you have the kind of more conservative leaning versions of those companies that are not going to censor you. So it's interesting to see that happen. I don't know how successful that's going to be or how long it's going to last, but it is interesting to see this kind of like parallel system start.
Yeah.
I personally don't think it's good for the country, right? Like because it really just kind of separates people into bubbles more and more. But it is exciting to see. It's like an interesting experiment to see kind of, how that works out, how that pans out.
And one other interesting thing is like, it seems like now Bitcoin has got this like critical mass of people, especially on Lightning. There's some cool new features and use cases being built out for Bitcoin. And now it seems like we're able to build this third alternative, right? We have the traditional left-leaning social media site, then we have the competitor right-leaning site, and now we have this like uncensorable site that doesn't even care who you are or whether or not you're even a human or what country you live in. You can just use it. And,
sure.
I wonder if then Bitcoin comes in and kind of like eats away at some of the bickering going on between the left and right
sure.
politicized platforms and kind of steals their lunch.
I think so, right? Bitcoin itself is not without its political angles, right? I think if you look at, who are the politicians supporting Bitcoin, they do tend to be more conservative. I think it's because libertarianism tends to fall within the conservative party right now. So, if you look at, who's speaking at the conferences, who are senators and congressmen, right? They're generally going to be Republicans. And same thing, the various influencers, right? And, you're going to have people from Reason.com, and you're going to have more libertarian-minded folks. So there is a politicization there. I wish there wasn't. It is concerning. There are a lot of the I forget her name, the Democrat, I believe Congresswoman Elizabeth Warren, right?
Warren? Yeah.
She just like is so against Bitcoin and crypto and like consumer protection. And it's like, what consumers have asked for your protection, right? But why is this now an issue that we're divided on, But again, if you look at the new way, like Andrew Yang, he's a Democrat, but again, he's more, outside the mainstream style Democrat. He loves Bitcoin and crypto. He's going to be speaking at the Bitcoin conference also. I think he may be the only Democrat that's speaking, but, I think it's interesting to see that politicization. I really hope it becomes less political, but especially now as we enter, all the more and more regulations in Bitcoin and crypto are coming down the pipes. I think it will become more politicized before it becomes less politicized.
Interesting. Even though it's harder to stop, even though as we've kind of discussed, you can go through this process and buy an item entirely without anyone seeing who you are or where you live or any of that. You think still it's going to be more politicized in the short term?
Yeah, and I think it really comes down to the Democrats wanting to, they're all about consumer protections and more financial regulations, and Republicans generally are on the side of lesser financial regulation. Now, obviously, not all of them. These are generalizations. I think generally both parties want more regulations and they want more censorship and more tracking, right? But of the avant-garde in both parties, maybe I would say, I think the Republicans tend to be a little bit more on the side of financial freedom and less regulation. But I think it'll be a hump we have to get over. Just like many of the other major political things that happen, right? There'll be kind of a fight between the two parties. It'll settle on one side, and once we're on the other side of it, everybody just accepts it for what it is.
So how do you think we get over that? Do you think that eventually, maybe a decade from now, we start to bundle a lot of these services together that allow someone to live their life more privately and not have any censorship? Or how do we get to the point from every single thing is being tracked and traced, and you can't, you have restrictions on what you can do and who you can send money to, and we know all your addresses and all that, to everything is entirely, I can just live my life without revealing information unless it's necessary for that particular task.
Yeah. So,
because everything's so interconnected.
Yeah. So like for our mission at Moon is to build like one cohesive product that allows you to live entirely on Bitcoin, privately, securely, without fees. Right? Like that is our mission as a company. Right. It takes a lot to build everything. Right. So right now we have our cards, and that's like our things focusing on payments. And likewise, other companies in the ecosystem are, they're focused on peer-to-peer. They're focused on this thing or that thing, or wallet or yield, right? Like there's all different types of companies. So right now, if you do want to live in this very private world, it's a hodgepodge of different products you have to use, just like you described shopping privately on Amazon. So you need a VPN, you need a Proton Mail, and you need Moon, and you need Amazon, and and there's like 17 other products. You need your browser, and you need your computer, and so it's a lot of stuff put together. I think as simple as we can make that process, the better. Right now I do think it's a little bit too fragmented, right? Like we want to ultimately provide an experience that's like Venmo or Cash App or like a bank. Like our goal is to be like a Bitcoin type of bank that is, don't want to use the B word, too much, but something that replaces your bank, so you can opt out of the system and say, hey, I don't like this. I don't agree with what's happening in the fiat system and the financial regulations and all that. I want to be on Bitcoin entirely.
Yeah.
So, and I think there's a lot of people who are going to do that.
So if you could fast forward a decade for the specifically for Moon's product, and you have this like vision for how that might come to be, what might that look like if you are building that Bitcoin bank or that Bitcoin product where you can opt out entirely? What would that look like from a customer experience?
Yeah, so honestly, I'm a big fan of Chase, which sounds kind of crazy, right? I love the Chase app. I think they were one of the first banks to have a really nice app. And they have great customer experience. I can call them on the phone; they answer right away. Right? I feel like I shouldn't be praising a bank right now, but I'm a fan of their experience. And our goal is to create something similar to that. Right? The average person, should not have to jump through technical hurdles and understand much about Lightning Network and smart contract. They don't want to understand these things. They're just like, let me get my money and then send it and receive it and put it where it has to go. Right? And maybe I need a loan sometimes, that's kind of it, right? Like that's what you get from your banking service. So, something that's simple that allows you to make payments, receive payments, make peer-to-peer payments, take out a loan, pay back your loan, do that in a way that does not require KYC and giving up your personal information, that it allows you to do this all cross-border and not within the restrictions of your country, and does so without costing a fortune or being manipulative, and honestly trying to be as decentralized as possible, right? We're somewhat of a hybrid company because we'll work with Visa and we're going to have some centralized components just for practical. It's got to work right? It has to be able, you have to be able to live on it, buy some bread. But, as much as possible, we want to be this global, decentralized type solution.
And does that require then browsers that are decentralized or phones that are or like masking IPs? Sure. Or like, does it require you to build out other layers of the tech stack to get to your vision? Like I know Impervious is working on a Lightning native browser that I think is probably the closest to this like privacy preserving idea that we're talking about here. Is that necessary for you to get to that vision 10 years from now?
Yeah, so for us, we're just trying to handle the financial component, right? So, moving Bitcoin, getting loans, making payments, all that kind of stuff. I think there's plenty, like Impervious, for example, like great company. They're doing some cool stuff. A lot of other companies building great things. It's really, I struggle with this sometimes. I look at the future and I see a lot of people building companies for this like really dystopian future, right? Where it's like everything's terrible. The surveillance state is after you and everything's terrible. And like, it's so dystopian. And, I'm not sure it's going to get that dark. I hope it's not going to get that dark, right? So when we build at Moon, we're thinking, okay, let's build something that's like a Venmo or Cash App, right? It's not like the world is over. We also don't want our success as a company to be dependent on like the world falling apart, right? Hopefully that doesn't happen. But if it does, we're ready for that too, So I think in terms of like having decentralized phones and decentralized browsers and just decentralizing everything, that is really the dystopian future where that's necessary. Because otherwise, it's generally not necessary to like decentralizing everything. Wow, that sounds great. I think certain things are just better done centralized, right? Like everybody's like, oh, blockchain, we put everything on the blockchain. It's like, well, why? It's more expensive to store stuff on the blockchain as opposed to just a database, right? And we've seen a lot of companies fail pretty miserably because they just wanted to decentralize something that doesn't need to be decentralized. So I think we got to be careful. If we do get that dystopian future, then it's like, okay, we got to decentralize a lot more stuff. But I really hope we don't get to that point.
Yeah, likewise. That's an interesting perspective. So I want to talk a little bit more about the specific platform, like the currencies you're accepting right now on Moon. I know you guys have a Coinbase integration and a Lightning integration. Do you have any like insights on how people are using Moon right now? Like what the percentage is between the two, why they're using Lightning over Coinbase or what? Because these are two different. They're not only different currencies, but they're different avenues, right? Like Coinbase is a custodial platform. Lightning is non-custodial. I would love to hear more insight on that breakdown and like why users are making the decisions they are.
Yeah. So we picked both of those methods initially because frankly I didn't know which one was going to be more popular. Honestly, I thought Coinbase was going to be far more popular initially. Ends up 90% of our volume is over Lightning Network. I was just like, so many people have a Coinbase account. Yeah, they're going to want to load their cards, make payments from Coinbase. But really our target market, they love the privacy, right? They want that self-custodial service. And, if you have to go through Coinbase, it's custodial. You have to KYC, right? You kind of lose some of the privacy there. Where with Lightning, it's a really cool experience. I think there's also an angle there where the Lightning community is small enough where you can target it and everybody in Lightning can find out about it. Like I can come on a podcast like this, right? And people who are interested in Lightning will find out about us. Whereas targeting, Coinbase users, it's like, well, there are millions of people all around the world. It's not a niche market that you can target. Often people who are on a Coinbase account are just buying some Bitcoin. They're doing some trading. They're not necessarily looking to spend Bitcoin or live on Bitcoin. So, yeah, 90% of our volume is on Lightning.
Interesting.
And one of the things we're adding in the next week or so is on-chain Bitcoin payments also. Because, unlike most companies, they start with on-chain, then they go to Lightning. We do the opposite. We start with Lightning, we go to on-chain. There's still a lot of people out there who, they don't understand Lightning or, all my money is on my Binance account. Can I just send it from my Binance account? And we have to say, no, I'm sorry, I can't take your money, right? Like, no, I need to be able to take their money. So with on-chain payments now, it's like you have an on-chain, like a normal Bitcoin wallet, you have a Lightning wallet. We can take your Bitcoin any way you want to send us your Bitcoin. So.
Right. That's very cool. And now when we're talking about Bitcoin and Lightning, and why this is becoming such a key part of the business, do you think some of it has to do with new commerce use cases enabled by Lightning, like the fact that there's very low fees down to zero, the fact that you can like scale transactions in any payment size and you can make them instantly? Like, do you see that as part of the reason as well why people are opting for Lightning?
Yeah, 100%. Right. Like, one of the reasons we wanted to integrate Lightning back 2019 was just a really great user experience. Right. It's like, I'm going to send Bitcoin. It's going to be instant. It's going to cost next to nothing. That's a great experience, right? Because I was thinking, how can I use Bitcoin to buy McDonald's, right?
Yeah.
And like, you can't do that on chain, right? You got to wait for confirmations, and there's fees, and it's like I said, you don't want to pay fees to spend your own money, right? Like that's not going to beat the fiat system. At the very least, you have to spend next to nothing to spend your own money, right? Hopefully we could do the opposite. We can actually reward people for spending their Bitcoin. So I think that's a big part of it. And I think the more, there are a lot of new use cases out there that are getting people into Lightning, micropayments, You have like ZBD doing, you could earn Bitcoin when you play games, which is really neat. And then a lot of those folks will come to Moon and then they'll spend that Bitcoin over Lightning. Right. So I really love those products that are bringing people into Lightning. They get Bitcoin on the network. And then they end up being often our customers because like, hey, I just earned some Bitcoin. Let me go buy something. Right. And that's creating that Bitcoin economy.
Yeah. Now, do you think over time, because Lightning is a very mobile first experience, and it's one of these experiences where you can just bring your phone and you can send payments instantly and they're there. Do you think Lightning is more impactful to commerce online or commerce in retail settings?
It's a good question. I think for now it's still primarily online. Okay. Because frankly, that's where most people are using their Bitcoin, right? And that's, I think, just from a historical perspective, that's where it is. It definitely enables the in-person experience more than anything ever before within Bitcoin, right? Because it is so fast. If McDonald's put Lightning on their point of sale system, boom, I scan the QR code, payment made, I get my McDonald's, right? Like you couldn't do that before. So it enables a lot of these point of sale experiences. The problem is getting all these point of sale systems set up, right? Right. And that's tough, right? Convincing a merchant. First of all, hard to convince a merchant to accept Bitcoin in the first place. But then to say, within Bitcoin, there's this other niche little thing called Lightning Network. And it's like, what now? So it's just like, I'm going to 0.00001% of my revenue come through Lightning. It's not even worth my time to think about it, right? Mm-hmm. But I think what you will see are more of the the broader crypto payment systems will add Lightning as an option, and that's how it's going to start picking up steam.
Right. Yeah. I guess it could also pick up steam through top-down initiatives put forth by like El Salvador, where they actually are making those McDonald's payments in person on Lightning. Or if Square decides to turn on all their merchants accepting Lightning, I guess that could start to build up that ecosystem. Yeah.
That'll be big, definitely. I think Square, El Salvador, I don't expect too many other countries to jump on that. I also think there's a little bit of irony having a top-down government supported Bitcoin. Kind of. There's some irony there, Yeah. But yeah, I mean that's definitely going to push it ahead for sure.
Right. Now, one interesting Lightning use case I wanted to bring up. I had the two guys at Coin Corner come on the show maybe about a month or two ago, and they were talking about their new Lightning card. And this is a physical card, but they said it could also work on your phone. You could also just have like a virtual card on your phone where you can pay over Lightning to any merchant. Of course, that merchant would have to accept Lightning payments, but it was on an open LNURL standard. So if there were multiple companies that were supporting this, anyone, like I could pay from a Coinbase account to a Coin Corner merchant over Lightning just by tapping the card as I would tap a credit card or tapping my phone. I think they even mentioned you can tap, you'd be able to tap two phones together to pay a friend. Like I could just walk up to you and tap your phone and there you got my payment. Do you see that as like an interesting angle for Moon to pursue over time? Or do you think that, because their approach I think is to entirely sidestep Visa, and in that process Visa wouldn't be involved. Sure. So what do you think about, do you think eventually Moon builds this entirely native Lightning experience in some capacity? In enabling that peer-to-peer payment without any involvement of a third party? Definitely.
I mean, I think, if somebody accepts Lightning directly, right, or if you're doing a peer-to-peer payment, there's no reason to have Visa involved in that, right? Right. The way we look at it is say, Visa's already integrated with all these merchants. So if you're paying a merchant, 99.9% of the time, it's going to be over the Visa network, right? Just because that's what they accept, right? Yeah. So they're kind of doing the inverse. They're saying, well, if someone accepts Lightning, you can go from maybe cash to Lightning. I think that's definitely interesting. I just think it's going to be a long time before you could do that everywhere you want, right? I think from a consumer perspective, you just want something that works everywhere you want to make a payment. But if Stripe and Square and all these companies start, having Lightning as a default option in their payment systems, then that probably gets much, much more interesting. So
now, if you were the CEO at Stripe, what actions would you take to make sure that you get a piece of this commerce that's going to be happening online over the Lightning Network?
So there's an interesting history with Stripe, because Stripe used to accept Bitcoin payments, and they didn't do it very well. They actually ended up losing lots of money, and then they stopped it. And I think I want to say this is 2015, 2016. And I think, the problem was that they had to wait for confirmations and the price would fluctuate in the meanwhile before they would have the asset in order to sell, which there are ways of solving that problem. They didn't do it the smartest way. But Lightning now kind of solves that problem. You get the Bitcoin, you get it right away. You can, hedge the price fluctuations and make sure that you don't lose money, potentially even making money when receiving Bitcoin payments over the Lightning Network. So I would think it's something that you 100% look in, especially now that Block is doing this, or will be doing this shortly, I imagine, given Jack Dorsey's investment with Lightning Network. So if you were one of their competitors, you better get on board.
Right. And would you have that same? Would the same rules apply for Visa? Do you think that they should be taking the same approach that Stripe takes? All the traditional financial players should step up to get on board to Lightning?
I think we're the only one working with Visa with Lightning stuff. So we are the hope for Lightning and Visa right now. But there's not a whole lot for Visa to do. Visa is just the rails. You got to keep in mind, Visa is just the rails. So beyond what we're doing, there's maybe a little bit more. There's some other fun stuff we're working on. But when it comes to the point of sale systems, Visa doesn't own the point of sale system. They're integrated with those point of sale systems, but those are different companies. Visa can't tell point of sale systems to start adding Lightning Network. But in terms of maybe Bitcoin goes over the Visa network eventually, right? As opposed to just US dollars. That's something that would be really interesting. Maybe, and then having some more of a bridge between Lightning and Visa, I think ends up being pretty interesting.
Right. Now, do you think Lightning payments will, over time, maybe this is a decade out still, but do you think they will meaningfully change the amount of commerce that happens? Because money is now frictionless and it can move from me to you to anyone else instantly, does that change the total volume of commerce in a meaningful way?
Yes. So I think volume changed in two significant ways. One is microtransactions that are just not cost effective previously. And the other is the number of transactions that will happen online as opposed to offline in the developing world. Because like I said before, it's you want to do some online payment, or you want to pay someone digitally from your phone to somebody else's phone. People are jumping through hoops overseas to make that happen. They're using, was in Africa, one of the major things that they use to transact are phone minutes. And there's even banks that are being started around phone minutes. You could bank with phone minutes. It's wild. So I think something with Lightning Network is okay, wow. Now I can use Bitcoin. I can send it my phone to their phone. I can do peer-to-peer. I can do all that stuff. You don't have to have documentation. You don't have to have much of anything. You buy some Bitcoin at an ATM and load up your phone and you're good to go. I think that's going to be very powerful.
Interesting. Now, I'd love to hear about some of the Lightning applications that you're interested in outside of Moon. Anything particular that comes to mind? I know you mentioned micro payments. Is there any,
Sure.
or maybe even it could be something that hasn't even been built yet that you wish someone would build? Would love to hear your thoughts on that.
It's a really good question. I'm a big fan of Bitcoin in games and stuff that ZBD is doing. I think that's awesome. I like the reward space where people are earning Bitcoin, and that's bringing people into Bitcoin more and more, which is very exciting. Generally rewards points are inflationary. If you get deflationary rewards points, well, that's a way better deal. And when people realize that, I don't think there's much going back. So those are exciting. I do like the idea of building more, decentralized applications on top of Lightning. I think, it would be great to see more of that. And frankly, I haven't done much of my own research on a lot of those. I know that there are some of the social media platforms coming out built on Lightning, and I think that's really exciting. But I think the most important thing for Lightning is user experience and some of the killer applications that bring people in, right? It's one thing to be like, okay, you have a podcast on Lightning and you can tip your podcaster and all that, right? Is that bringing somebody who has never used Bitcoin into Lightning? Right? Mm-hmm. That's the question I always ask. And, for example, at Moon, we have people who learn about Bitcoin to use our product because they want to make a private payment, right? And I think that's very powerful. And I think same thing, like I said, rewards, people learn about Lightning because they want to withdraw their Bitcoin, or, they're playing a game and they're earning Bitcoin. Wow, well, now you have to get your Lightning wallet, right? Mm-hmm. So I think the more a product can onboard someone to Lightning and provide an educational experience, that's what excites me the most.
Yeah, I think that's 100% right. Getting more sats in more people's hands. It's mm-hmm. such a big constraint right now. And it's a real challenge to to teach someone the way that, like, you and I may have learned about Bitcoin and Lightning. Mm-hmm. It's like we have a 10-step process of, like, learn what mm-hmm. Bitcoin is, learn how to buy it, learn how to store it, learn how to save it, learn how to move it to Lightning, learn how to use a Lightning wallet, learn how to spend it. But then it's like, well, why am I spending it? Because I already learned how good it is at saving my money, and I shouldn't spend it. And, it's a horrible process to have to teach someone new to go through that, like, 10-step process to get them to spend some sats, on a Lightning app. But if they get it, if they earn the sats to begin with no cost to them, it's just like magic. It's like you play a normal game, but at the end you get actual money, and then you can use that money wherever you want. And then you have the money, and it's like you've just short-circuited that. You don't have to go through that 10-step thing anymore, right? You just mm-hmm. get the money and go. So I 100% agree. I think there's going to be a lot of innovation happening in the different ways we can onboard people to Lightning by paying them. And that's just going to be mind-blowing stuff. I think social media will be a big one. Mm-hmm. Being able to, like, earn for, a tweet. If instead of getting 100 likes, what if you got 100 sats? Mm-hmm. Then you pay those sats to the next guy, and you see another funny tweet, and then they get some sats, and it just, like, mm-hmm. really quickly you can see how the addressable market of people with sats could just rapidly expand. I agree. Yeah, absolutely.
It's exciting stuff, and also just the user experience, right? Like you were saying, somebody they just get Bitcoin. Okay, I got a non-custodial wallet. I got a seed phrase. I understand. I have a public key. All right, I got that. And then I was like, okay, so now let me teach you about Lightning Network. And it's like, whoa. I remember when I first got a Lightning wallet, I was getting set up with Blue Wallet, and I was like, this is so complicated, But then once I did it one time, it was like, oh, this is a piece of cake. And now it's second nature. I don't even think about it. But you always have to keep in mind the person who has not learned it yet is like, this is just a huge thing to overcome. So, I know Moon with 2Us, they've got a great onboarding experience, but I think that there's still, it scares people when they're like, here's your recovery, here's your backup, here's your toolkit, your emergency, break this glass if things go wrong. And you're like, hold on, what am I signing up for here? I think sometimes it's still kind of, it feels a little scary to people. So I think on one hand it's user experience, but then there's also education, and they're just going to meet in the middle. And that's where we're going to hit the right magic point.
And do you think there's any applications that should exist that could enable that matching point, that bring together, like user experience and enable millions or billions to be onboarded? but just don't exist yet?
I think there's probably something really interesting that could be done with login. And I think we're seeing somewhat a revolution in login right now. A lot of products now, they don't even use email password, right? They're using the OAuth integration, or now they use magic links. So you just need email, they don't give you a password. And now you see login with wallets, right? So, I don't think it's settled exactly where it's going to be just yet. Like login with a wallet scares me a little bit. Because like, how do I recover my account? What if I forget which wallet I authed with, it's tricky. I think it's very tricky, and we're seeing a lot of change happen right now. But if we can have a system where, there are systems out there with a username and password that act as one key in a multi-sig wallet. And so you don't have to have a passphrase or anything like that. It just seems like a normal authentication flow, and all the cryptographic stuff just kind of happens in the background. But it's multi-sig. The company you're working with has the other signature, so it's not fully custodial. It's a little 50-50. And I think that may provide a really nice happy medium point for a lot of people to, they get that security, but they also don't feel like the world is going to end if they lose a piece of paper. So.
That's an interesting one. I haven't heard many people discussing that. I know the team at Synonym is working on, they've got like a web of trust, and they've got slash tags, and they're working on decentralizing identity to some degree. It reminds me a little bit of that, but I agree.
It's a hard problem to solve. It's a very hard problem. A lot of companies trying to do that. We're going to put identity on the blockchain, or identity is going to be here. Self-sovereign identity, which I love that idea. I think that's very powerful. But reaching a critical mass is the biggest problem, and no one's been able to crack that just yet.
Is there anything that you see right now, maybe in the Lightning space, maybe in the broader crypto space, that a lot of companies are going after, and you just don't think that is going to be the way it gets solved? Like you think that people are going after maybe the wrong approach, or do you see anything where you're like, I just don't know if that's the way we're going to solve this particular problem?
It's a great question. I don't have a good answer for that off the top of my head.
That's fair.
I would say, one I will say, and again, I'm speaking not from any experience, and you may have some better experience with this for me, is I think the podcasting stuff. I think getting into Sphinx Chat, it's like a really cool product, so futuristic, so deep in Lightning. But good luck getting the average Joe to sign up for that thing,
Yeah.
Like, it is complicated. Like, you have to have a Lightning wallet already to even just onboard, and I was confused using it, Oh yeah.
I think you need a node, or maybe not. Maybe that's changed.
I'm not sure. I haven't used it in a while, but but that's the whole thing. Is like, if I want to listen to a podcast, I have to take like this 20-step process, and now I can like pay the person I'm listening to and tip them, which is like, what's the market for people who want to tip the person they're listening to? Why don't I want to save money instead, right? So, so I think like, okay, I think it's super interesting, and I think they should keep building it. I'm not trying to knock it at all. But it's one of those that I think about, and I say, where is this going? And apparently the numbers, like the growth is great. I think absolute numbers are still low, but the growth is good.
Yeah.
But it's just like, how does that hit Spotify numbers? That may take 30 years, So.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. I think on Sphinx specifically, I've also tried to set up an account there, or get it going, and I wasn't able to sync it, whatever. There was some like onboarding process I had to do, and I couldn't do it. And there was no other way for me to get around it. I kind of just, the app just sat around on my phone. I wasn't even able to log in. But I think in the podcasting side, there's going to be a lot of, like, right now I use Fountain. Fountain's probably the easiest podcasting 2.0 app. But as we talked about, like, what happens if you flip the equation? What happens if it's not only can you pay podcasters, but if the value can go the other way? There's a lot of interesting stuff that, it enables, right? When anyone can earn for posting content, for anything that for playing a game, when anyone can earn things, all of a sudden there's a bigger pool of money to go around and slosh around between creators and their fans and their listeners and their audience, right?
Yeah.
And there's also, though, in podcasting specifically, there's a few new use cases that I think will be pretty important that aren't even related to money. Like, for example, you can post, you can send messages to podcasters right now. Like I receive a running list of all the people who send in comments and questions directly to the podcast feed that I can't access on Spotify. There's just no way to comment on a podcast.
Sure.
And so there's a few social elements. I know Adam Curry and the Podcast Index; those guys are working on stuff. Fountain's working on stuff. There's all sorts of teams building out new kind of like social features, and that those features then interoperate. So I think if I'm thinking about the way that podcasting kind of competes against Spotify, it would be through the lens of like a bunch of smaller companies all being interoperable with each other, being able to move money to and from any app to any other app, and being able to move comments and questions and stuff like that, like making it more social but completely in the open and interoperable. And that mass of new companies could then maybe challenge Spotify. But I agree. I don't think it happens as a one-to-one. Like I don't think it's going to be Sphinx alone that tackles Spotify or Fountain alone. I think it's going to be you got to get that collective going.
That's cool. I like that. That makes a lot more sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's early days for all this stuff. It's really exciting to watch it develop. But who knows? I could be wrong. Anyways, let's wrap this up and maybe tell listeners a little bit more about where they can go to find you and find Moon.
Yeah, so you can find Moon at paywithmoon.com. We are on Twitter and Instagram, every social place you can imagine. We're at paywithmoon. For me personally, I'm at KRUCRAFT, Crewcraft, on Twitter. So feel free to give us a follow. Or email me, Ken at paywithmoon.com. Always happy to hear from folks.
Awesome. Thanks so much for taking the time. Really enjoyed the chat and hope we can do it again soon. Welcome to the Lightning Round presented by Voltage. Voltage is the industry-leading provider of Bitcoin and Lightning node infrastructure. In fact, many of your favorite apps and services already use Voltage to scale their business quickly and easily without maintenance. Voltage also offers an inbound liquidity product called Flow, which helps you as a node operator get inbound liquidity easily. Overall, Voltage is creating the industry standard suite of non-custodial products, helping brands, engineers, and startups scale. To learn more about Voltage, visit voltage.cloud. Lightning round, here we go. In the last 7 days, you guys sent in 36,341 sats. That came from 19 different supporters. We got 17 messages. Thank you all. Huge week, and I'm glad you're enjoying the show. Real quick, let's run through the top 5 supporters of the week. First place is Y with 9,506 sats. We got Mary Oscar after that with 6,860 sats. We have an anonymous user, third with 4,410 sats. Nick comes in next with 2,940 sats. And then we have GS Sovereign with 1,960. We had a bunch of comments and questions come in, so I'm going to read through them right now. First one, this is from episode 26 with Justin Rizvani at Zion. Y sends in 3 messages. First one says, money like water, and that's a reference to the fact that Lightning enables money to flow seamlessly and without friction. This is something that Justin talked about at length. His Rizvani's 6-point thesis. Y says, this episode is off with a bang. That was a great kind of overview of how Zion thinks about social media. If you haven't checked that one out, Zion's rethinking the way social media should be built on Lightning. So give that episode a listen afterwards. And Y also sends in a comment that says, likes are shitcoins. And it's kind of true. When I start to think about the way that social media works today, you see viral posts, viral tweets, viral Instagram photos. They got 100,000 likes, and it's just a like. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't go anywhere. As soon as you take that off of Twitter, off of Instagram, off of Reddit, whatever the platform is, the likes are useless. They don't mean anything. I kind of wonder what happens when it's not 100,000 likes, but posts are getting 100,000 sats. We're starting to see some of this happening on platforms like Stacker News. Just yesterday, actually, there was someone on Stacker News who did an AMA, and she earned 138,000 sats from the community. So yeah, likes are shitcoins now. It's sats. You want to get sats for your content. Likes can kind of stay in Web 2. We don't need them anymore. Next comment comes in from Mary Oscar, and he says, boosting for Oleg. That was another great episode. Thank you for the boost, Mary Oscar. Ethan at Noah says, love the show, Kevin. Keep up the phenomenal work and the all-star guest list. Thank you, Ethan. I really appreciate that. We've been cranking out a lot of episodes, and there's a lot more coming. So thank you for listening, and thank you for the sats. J24 says, this is in reference to episode 23 with Adam Curry. Says, without the weird medicine rant, I would be recommending this episode to absolutely everyone. J24, you should still recommend the episode to absolutely everyone. If you don't like the medicine stuff, you can skip through that. But yeah, Adam's episode was on point. It's already, I believe it's the most popular episode now that I've done to date. If not, it's one of the top 2 or 3. And the final comment comes in from an anonymous user. It says, keep up the great work, Kevin. This is quickly becoming my favorite podcast in the Bitcoin space. I don't even know what to say. I appreciate that. Really kind words. I don't think we're there quite yet. There's a lot of great podcasts in Bitcoin, but I appreciate it. And thank you for sending in the sats and the comment. I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys send in this week, this episode. I should have another episode out in a few more days, but excited to see all your comments and questions, and I'll see you in a few days.